Hi, my name's Nola Carr. I bought a first-class ticket with my own money, my first ever. But when I boarded, the flight attendant looked me up and down, smirked, and said, "Poor people are in the wrong place." That flight attendant was my sister. Everyone laughed as she made me walk to the back like I didn't belong there. 24 hours later, the entire country knew what she'd done. But what no one knew was how long my own family had been preparing to erase me, and how far I was willing to go to take my name back. I still remember that morning in Austin. The air was clean, the kind that feels crisp enough to make you believe something good might finally happen. My suitcase wheels hummed softly across the airport tiles, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had earned this small moment. A first-class ticket. My first ever. Not gifted, not begged for, bought with money I'd worked for. After years of being told I wasn't enough, I wanted to prove, if only to myself, that I could sit up front without apology. The boarding gate buzzed with chatter and the smell of burnt coffee. I glanced at my watch, 7:15 a.m., and joined the line for first class. The woman in front of me had a designer bag that probably cost more than my car, but I didn't care. I was proud of my faded leather tote, the one my dad gave me before he passed. He used to tell me, when you buy something for yourself, no one can take it away. I held on to that thought like a shield as I handed my boarding pass to the gate agent. The jet bridge felt colder than I expected. My heart raced a little. Maybe it was the thrill of walking toward a space I'd always seen through a curtain. I was halfway down the aisle when I heard the faint shuffle of polished shoes behind me, and then her voice. "Ma'am, can I see your ticket?" I froze. That voice. I turned and there she was, Celine, my older sister. Her smile was small and tight, the kind she used when she wanted to hide her irritation. She was in uniform, hair pulled back, so tightly it looked like it hurt. "Celine," I said softly, unsure whether to be happy or uneasy. Her eyes flicked down my dress, linen, simple, and then back up to my face. "Didn't expect to see you here," she said, voice sharp as glass. "I'm on business," I replied, showing her my ticket. "Seattle meeting. Seat 1A. She didn't look at the ticket right away. She looked at me. Then, with a slight raise of her eyebrow, she said, "First class, huh?" There was something in her tone that made the passengers nearby glance our way. A couple across the aisle leaned in just enough to hear. "Celine, it's me," I whispered, forcing a small smile. "Let's not do this here." But she did. She scanned the ticket slowly, handed it back, and said in a voice meant for everyone around to hear, "Poor people are in the wrong place." Laughter burst somewhere behind me. A man snickered. She thought she belonged here? My stomach dropped, a slow, heavy fall. I looked at my sister, searching for even a flicker of kindness, but her face stayed neutral, cold, professional. "Celine," I said quietly, "stop." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'm just following procedure," she said. "You should be in economy." I wanted to speak, to show her the receipt on my phone, to remind her of who I was, not just her sister, but someone who'd built her life from scratch. But my throat tightened. The words stuck somewhere between disbelief and shame. Another attendant appeared, younger, eyes darting nervously between us. "Miss Carr," she said to Celine, "should I?" Celine nodded. "Escort her to the back. We'll sort it out after takeoff." The attendant touched my arm gently. "Please, ma'am." I felt the heat rise in my face. Passengers whispered. Phones lifted discreetly, recording, pretending not to. Every step down that aisle felt like walking through wet cement. I kept my eyes straight ahead, refusing to see the smirks, the stares. When we reached economy, the attendant gestured toward an empty middle seat. "You can sit here for now," she said quietly, avoiding my eyes. I sat down, my hands trembling in my lap. My heart pounded, so loudly it drowned out the captain's announcement. I stared at my reflection in the window, my own eyes tired but clear. The reflection trembled with the vibration of the plane. They don't see you, I thought. They see what they want to see. I adjusted my seatbelt, pretending to be fine. My father's voice echoed in my memory, calm and certain. "Your silence is stronger than their noise." He was right. Silence could build armor. So I stayed quiet. But the quiet hurt more than the laughter. As the flight leveled out, Celine walked by with the drink cart. Her posture was perfect, Chin high, every inch the composed professional. She passed my row without a glance, not even the courtesy of eye contact. The man beside me whispered she should have stayed in her lane. I turned toward the window again. Clouds rolled beneath us, endless and soft. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted metal. I thought about standing up, shouting, demanding that everyone know the truth, that I had paid for that seat, that she was my sister, that she had stripped me of dignity in front of strangers just to prove she could. But I didn't. Not yet. Because something in me knew this wasn't the end. I took a deep breath, straightened my back, and whispered under my breath, "This ends here." The plane touched down in Seattle just before noon. My hands were still cold, even though the cabin had been warm. I walked off the aircraft without a glance backward, pretending I didn't feel every eye on me. My sister's laughter still rang faintly in my ears, looping like a cruel song I couldn't shut off. By the time I reached the baggage claim, my phone had already begun buzzing. One notification, then 5, then dozens. At first, I thought it was work, but when I unlocked the screen, my heart dropped. My name was plastered everywhere. Poor first-class girl. A trending tag. There was a video attached, the moment Celine told me to move back where I belonged. Someone had captioned it, "Watch this wannabe try to sneak into first class. LOL. The clip had nearly 1 million views. Comments scrolled too fast to read. She looks like a scammer. She's probably lying about paying for that seat. Props to the attendant. She handled it perfectly. And there it was, Celine's name, her face, praised for upholding standards. People applauded her poise, her professionalism. I felt sick. I kept walking, my legs stiff, until I reached the curb. The city air was damp, the kind that smells faintly of rain and exhaust. I hailed a cab and gave the driver my hotel's name. During the ride, my phone kept buzzing. Messages from coworkers, acquaintances, even a few distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. "Is that you in the video? Oh my God, Nola, what happened?" By the time I reached the hotel, the notifications had turned from curiosity to pity. I shut the phone off and pressed it against my chest. Inside my room, the silence hit hard. The lights were too bright, the mirror too unforgiving. I set my bag down, sat on the edge of the bed, and finally turned the phone back on. My reflection stared at me from the black screen. Pale, tired, eyes rimmed with red. I scrolled again, unable to stop myself, like watching a car crash you can't look away from. I typed out a post. "For those sharing the video, please know it's my sister, not a random attendant." Then I deleted it. Typed another. "The seat was mine." Deleted again. Every word I wrote sounded defensive. Pointless. I closed the app, tossed the phone onto the bed, and whispered to the empty room, "You promised yourself they'd never break you again." My voice cracked on the last word. I took a shower, trying to wash the humiliation from my skin, but it clung like static. Afterward, I ordered coffee I didn't drink and stared out the window at the gray Seattle skyline. I'd faced setbacks before, but this was different. This wasn't about a mistake. It was about being erased in real time, by blood. The next day, I boarded a flight to Phoenix for a family dinner my mother had scheduled weeks earlier. I almost canceled, but part of me wanted to look my sister in the eye, to see if she could still laugh when the audience wasn't strangers. The sun was low when I pulled into my mother's driveway. The house looked the same, trim hedges, porch light flickering like always, but I felt like an intruder. Inside, the familiar smell of pot roast filled the air. My mother called from the kitchen, "Nola, sweetheart, you made it!" Her voice still had warmth, but her eyes didn't. She hugged me briefly, already glancing at the door. "Celine's running late. Long flight," she said. I set my purse down and sat at the table. My brother-in-law, Eddie, scrolled his phone while my niece watched cartoons in the next room. The television laughed for all of us. When Celine finally walked in, she was radiant as ever, hair perfect, makeup untouched by guilt. She kissed our mother's cheek. "Sorry I'm late," she said brightly. "You all won't believe what happened on my flight." My stomach tightened. I didn't look up. She started telling the story, dramatizing every detail, even mimicking my voice. This woman insisted she had a first-class ticket, but you could tell she didn't belong. She tried to bluff her way up front. I had to ask her to move. Eddie laughed. People really try that? Celine grinned. You'd be amazed. Some folks just can't stay in their lane. My mother chuckled softly. Well, you always didn't know how to handle a situation, Celine. No one looked at me. Not once. I cut a piece of roast I couldn't swallow. The knife in my hand shook slightly, and I set it down before anyone noticed. The room was filled with light conversation. Safe, polite, indifferent. Inside, I felt something tightening. The humiliation from the flight had been bad enough, but this, being invisible in my own family, was worse. Celine kept talking, her laughter smooth and effortless. Poor woman. She looked so embarrassed. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I pushed my chair back slowly. The sound scraped across the tile, sharp enough to make her pause. For the first time that night, her eyes met mine. You done, Celine? I asked quietly. She blinked, caught off guard by my tone. Excuse me. You told the story wrong, I said, standing. The woman you humiliated wasn't a stranger. It was me. The table fell silent. Even the TV in the other room seemed to hush. My mother's face turned pale. Eddie stopped mid-bite. Celine recovered quickly. Oh, come on, Nola. You're exaggerating. It was just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding doesn't trend on the internet, I said, grabbing my purse. And it doesn't come from your own sister. Her mouth opened, but no words came. I turned to our mother, who stared at her plate as if it might save her. I'm glad dinner was good, I said softly. You all enjoy the rest of your night. No one stopped me as I walked out. The night air outside was cool, the kind that stings just enough to keep you awake. I sat in my car, hands on the wheel, heart pounding. The lights from the house glowed behind me, warm, distant, untouchable. I turned the key, the engine humming beneath my fingers. My eyes blurred for a moment, but I blinked the tears away. They had laughed while I drowned. Not even a hand reached out. I shifted into drive and whispered to myself, never again. The drive back from Phoenix was long and quiet. I turned off the radio after the first hour. My thoughts were louder than anything playing on the stations anyway. The hum of the tires on the asphalt was steady, almost hypnotic. Every few miles, a memory surfaced, the sound of laughter around the dinner table, the way my mother avoided my eyes when I walked out. By the time I reached my apartment in Austin, the sun had already sunk below the skyline. I parked in the lot, sat for a moment, and let the silence settle. The weight in my chest didn't feel like sadness anymore. It felt like recognition. Something that had been waiting years to be seen. I took my bag, walked up the narrow stairwell, and unlocked the door. The click of the lock sounded too loud in the stillness. Inside, everything looked exactly as I'd left it. The coffee cup from yesterday still sat on the counter, a ring of brown at the bottom. The air smelled faintly of lavender and dust. I slipped off my shoes and left my phone face down on the table. For a while I just stood there. Then I sank to the floor, leaning back against the couch. My legs folded beneath me, the way they used to when I'd sit in my father's office as a kid, waiting for him to notice me. It's always been this way, hasn't it? I said aloud. The sound of my own voice startled me. I almost laughed. The apartment was too quiet, the kind of quiet that presses on your ribs. I looked around, my eyes landing on the old wooden drawer beneath the TV stand, the one I hadn't opened in years. I hesitated before crawling over, tugging it open. Inside were stacks of photo albums, a few certificates, and a thick layer of dust. I pulled one album out, the navy blue one my mother used to keep in the living room. The cover was cracked along the spine. I sat cross-legged and flipped it open. Birthday parties, vacations, church picnics. In each photo, I was either half in the frame or standing in the background, a shadow near the edge of the moment. Celine was always in the middle, smiling wide, blowing out candles, holding gifts. In one photo, she had her arms wrapped around our mother while I stood off to the side, clapping. I turned the page. Another Christmas picture, our family in matching sweaters. My name under the photo was spelled Nora. I traced the letters with my finger and felt something twist in my stomach. My graduation photo was next, or at least the one that should have been. The sleeve of my robe was visible in a group shot, but no one had written anything under it. No name, no date, just blank space. I remembered how I'd asked my mother once if she'd mailed out my graduation announcements like she had for Celine's. She'd said she forgot. "You know how busy I get, sweetheart," she'd said. "You don't need all that attention anyway." I kept flipping until the memories blurred together. Celine getting a car for her 17th birthday. A cherry red convertible with a bow on the hood. Me, at 15, watching from the porch, pretending not to care as Dad handed her the keys. When I turned 16, I got a used bus pass and a reminder to be responsible. Celine's 18th birthday was at a fancy restaurant downtown. Everyone toasted to her bright future. When mine came, my mother made spaghetti and forgot to buy a cake. She said, "We'll celebrate next week." But next week never came. I set the album aside and leaned my head against the couch cushion. The images still floated behind my eyes. I realized then that the flight, the video, the laughter, it was never about the seat. It was about the story my family had always told themselves. Celine, the golden one. Nola, the mistake they learned to live with. It wasn't anger I felt now. It was a strange, sharp clarity. They never saw me as worthy, just present. A placeholder, a reminder of something they didn't want to remember. I stood and walked to the bookshelf. On the bottom shelf, behind old tax folders, was a small leather-bound journal, my father's. The edges were frayed from years of his hands flipping through it. He'd given it to me before he died. "Write what matters," he'd said. I never had the courage to. I opened to the first page. His handwriting was neat, slanted slightly to the right. Notes, grocery lists, bits of scripture. Then, about halfway through, I found something written in blue ink, words I hadn't noticed before. "You've always been the quiet storm, Nola. They won't see you coming, but they'll remember." I sat down on the couch and read it again, slowly this time. My father had been many things. Stern, fair, stubborn, but he'd seen me, even when no one else did. The clock on the wall ticked softly. Outside, traffic hummed somewhere in the distance. I let the stillness settle again, but this time it didn't feel heavy. It felt alive, like the air before rain. I thought of the video, the laughter, my sister's voice echoing through the cabin. All those years of letting them define me, of shrinking to fit the space they gave me. Maybe it was time to stop waiting for someone to pull me out of the water. Maybe it was time I learned to swim through the storm. I walked to the window, pulled back the curtain, and looked out over the city lights. The skyline shimmered, distant and unbothered. I took a deep breath, the kind that feels like starting over. "Maybe it's time I become the storm," I whispered. By the time the sun rose the next morning, I had barely slept. But I didn't feel tired. I felt clear. Still, like the air before a thunderstorm. I made coffee without thinking, sipped it without tasting it, and stared at the window as downtown Austin began to buzz below. By 8:15, I was in my office, small, clean, functional. The kind of place no one visits unless they have to. My desk sat beneath a window that faced a parking lot, and the walls were bare except for one framed photo of my father shaking hands with a client back when he still ran the family business. That photo stayed with me through every move, every job, every disappointment. I dropped my bag on the chair and opened my laptop. There it was, my flight confirmation from Ether Sky. Seat 1A. Fully paid. No discounts, no vouchers. I clicked through the receipt slowly, like I didn't already know what I'd see. My name, printed clearly. My seat right there. I had the right to sit in that chair. And she took it from me. It wasn't just the words Celine had said on that plane that bothered me. It was the way she said them. Her voice didn't shake. Her expression didn't flicker. She wasn't surprised to see me there. She was annoyed. She had expected it. And she had planned for it. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling for a beat, then picked up my cell phone and called Ether Sky's customer support line. I used my work number, and when the automated system asked for my name, I gave a fake one. The representative was polite, chipper in that practiced way, and walked me through the system. I asked about my seat, why I had been moved. She said after a pause. It looks like there was a manual reassignment logged before check-in. It wasn't a gate error or an overbook. It was requested. Requested by who? Let me check. It shows the change came from an internal crew access code. Sorry, I can't give more than that. Internal privacy policies. That was enough. After we hung up, I sat still for a moment, the phone warm in my hand. Then I opened a secure chat app and messaged someone I hadn't spoken to in a while. Avery Martinez. We'd gone to college together. She was now a systems engineer for a consulting firm that handled IT infrastructure for multiple airline vendors. I typed, "Hey, I need a favor. EtherSky related. Call when free." She called 15 minutes later. "I haven't heard from you since." "What? The internship in Houston?" "Long time," I said. "This is not a small favor." I explained everything. Not the family part. Just the professional insult. The seat. The reassignment. The public spectacle. Avery didn't ask questions. She just said, "I'll check the back end. If someone on the crew altered your booking internally, it'll be in the audit logs. Give me 35 minutes later, she sent me an encrypted folder. Inside were internal logs, back-end messages, and system notes from the flight crew's handheld devices. I scrolled slowly, each line twisting deeper into my gut. There it was, a message from Celine's device to another flight attendant's console. "Make sure my little sister isn't anywhere near first class. She's not ether material." Below it, another line. A joke. A stab. "I'm not ruining my brand for a discount sibling." My pulse thudded in my ears. I stared at those words for what felt like hours. This wasn't heat of the moment. This wasn't professional confusion. It was premeditated, calculated, executed, and it wasn't just the theft of a seat. It was the theft of dignity. I closed my eyes and tried to remember the last time Celine had spoken to me like a sister. Maybe when Dad died. Maybe not even then. She had always been polished, controlled. She knew exactly how to play the room. And I, quiet, careful, never did. I opened my journal and flipped to a blank page. I didn't write a rant. I didn't vent. I wrote one sentence. This isn't revenge. This is reclamation. I copied all the logs. Every message, every timestamp. I saved them to 3 different drives and printed a hard copy. Then I composed a short email, attached the documents, and sent it, anonymously, to EtherSky's internal ethics board. Subject: Flight misconduct and abuse of authority. Internal review requested. No signature. No explanation. The truth, sent quietly. I closed my laptop and stood. My reflection in the window looked different, like someone who'd stopped apologizing. I wasn't done yet, not even close. But I had made my move. 2 nights passed, and my life had slipped into an eerie calm. I worked through the day, cooked a simple dinner, even watered the plant on the windowsill that I usually forgot existed. Everything looked ordinary, but I wasn't. Something inside me had shifted after sending that email. I hadn't heard back, and I didn't expect to. The truth didn't need applause. It just needed time. That evening, as the sun set behind the Austin skyline, I sat at my small kitchen table with my laptop open, reviewing some work spreadsheets I wasn't really reading. The city was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. My phone buzzed once, then stopped. A voicemail notification blinked on the screen from an unknown number. I pressed play. "Hello, Ms. Carr." A man's voice said, low, calm, deliberate. "My name is Alden Hartwell. I was in row 28D on your flight to Seattle. I saw what happened. I'd like to talk, if you're willing. No press, no agenda. Just the truth." The message ended there. I stared at the phone. The voice sounded old, steady, the kind of voice you trust before you have a reason to. My first thought was that it might be a journalist fishing for a quote, but something about how he said the truth stuck with me. I replayed it twice, then wrote down the number on a sticky note. I didn't call back right away. I spent an hour pacing, pouring and ignoring coffee, weighing whether to open a door that might bring more chaos. Finally, I called. He answered on the second ring. "Ms. Carr, thank you for calling. You said you were on the flight," I said. "What do you want?" "To buy you a cup of coffee," he replied. "That's all." We agreed to meet the next morning at a small cafe near downtown, quiet, away from the business district. The kind of place where no one bothers to look twice. When I walked in, he was already there. A tall man, silver hair, navy blazer, posture that carried old authority. He stood when he saw me. "Ms. Carr." "Yes," I said cautiously. "Alden Hartwell." He extended his hand and I shook it. His grip was warm, firm, like a man who'd spent years making decisions people respected. We sat. The waitress poured coffee, and he waited until she walked away before speaking. I spent 40 years in aviation, he began. Started as a pilot, ended up on the corporate side. I still own shares in Ether Sky. Not much, but enough to keep an eye on how things are run. I nodded, unsure where this was going. I watched what happened on that flight, he continued. From row 28, everyone saw it. The way she spoke to you, it wasn't protocol. It was personal. And personal misconduct inside a professional uniform. He shook his head. That's poison for a company. I don't want to ruin anyone, I said quietly. Good, he said, leaning forward. Because you don't have to. Truth ruins on its own. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. These are contact names, board members, department heads, a few people on the operations team who still care about ethics over PR. I'll pass your story along discreetly. You remind me of my daughter. She didn't wait for permission to be respected either. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I just watched his hand slide the folder across the table. The edges were worn, and I realized this wasn't a man acting on impulse. He'd come prepared. Why are you helping me? I asked. He smiled, soft but tired. Because I've seen how fast a company will chew up the wrong person to protect the right image. And because I was sitting there when your sister took away your seat. You didn't deserve that. The cafe was quiet except for the sound of the espresso machine hissing in the background. I thought about Celine, how she'd always managed to stay on the winning side of every story. But this time, there were witnesses. When we left, Mr. Hartwell gave me his card. Send what you have, he said. Let me worry about where it goes. I spent the rest of the afternoon rereading the chat logs, the seat reassignment data, and the proof of my payment. It wasn't just about proving my seat anymore. It was about exposing the pattern, the culture that allowed it to happen. That evening, I sat at my desk with my laptop open and a new email window blank in front of me. My finger hovered over the keyboard for a long time. Then I began typing. I created an anonymous address and attached every document, chat messages, internal logs, the payment receipts, the flight record. No commentary, no accusations, just the raw information. In the subject line I wrote, "For the record, transparency matters." I addressed it to the contacts from Hartwell's folder. 10 recipients. 1 truth. Before hitting send, I whispered to myself, no threats, no shouting, just truth. Then I clicked. The screen went blank for a moment as the message left my outbox. I felt my shoulders drop, as if the act itself had lifted something heavy off of me. Afterward, I sat in the dark, phone beside me, waiting for a reply that didn't come. Not that night. Not the next morning. The world outside my window kept moving, cars passing, neighbors walking dogs, someone laughing across the street. Everything ordinary. But inside me, something quiet and fierce was building. For once, I wasn't asking to be seen. I was daring them to keep looking away. By the time Thursday rolled around, I thought I had done everything I could. I had sent the evidence to the right people, said what needed saying without theatrics, and even found peace in the silence that followed. But quiet doesn't always mean still. Sometimes, it's just a warning before the earth shifts under you. Late that afternoon, I was sitting on the balcony outside my apartment, sipping lukewarm tea, when my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Not even a minute later, a message popped up. It was from Jolene. I didn't know if I should tell you this, but your father made me promise. Call me when you can. My heart thudded. Jolene hadn't contacted me in years, not since the week of Dad's funeral. Back then, she barely said a word, just hugged me with trembling arms and cried into my shoulder like something was stuck in her throat that she couldn't get out. I called her back immediately. Her voice was just as I remembered, deliberate, soft, cautious. I need you to come see me, Nola, she said. Tonight, if you can. I live just outside Seattle now. It's time. There was no small talk. No wasted breath. I packed a bag, booked a red-eye, and landed at Seattle-Tacoma just past midnight. Jolene picked me up herself. She'd aged, of course, but there was something stronger in her eyes now, as if she'd been waiting for this moment too long to let it slip by. Her home was small but clean, Photos of people I barely recognized lined the mantel, including one of my father at a company party, smiling in a way he never did at home. We sat in her kitchen. She poured tea, the same brand my dad used to drink. And then she placed a file folder on the table between us. "This," she said, pushing it toward me, "is the will your father actually signed." I stared at her. "What?" "The original," she confirmed. "I was there when he signed it. I witnessed it. So did Langston. He notarized it himself." I opened the folder with shaky fingers. My name was right there. 59% of the company's stock. The house in Hillview. A lake cabin I hadn't known even existed. "I don't understand," I whispered. "This isn't the version Celine read at the attorney's office." "No," Jolene said, her eyes narrowing. "Because your sister changed it. 2 weeks after your dad passed, Langston got a call from her. She said she wanted to revise a few non-essential details to protect the family image. He told her that wasn't legal. That your father was of sound mind when he signed the first one." "What happened next?" "She fired him," Jolene said. "Or rather, your mother did. They claimed the notary was biased. Within a week, another version of the will appeared. Your name was nearly erased. Langston called me. Said he was going to fight it, but then nothing. Silence. He disappeared from the business, completely. No one's seen him since." I sat back in the chair, breathless. The tea in my cup had gone cold. "You're telling me they forged a legal document?" Jolene nodded. "Your sister didn't just take your seat, Nola. She took your legacy." The words didn't make sense in my mouth. Legacy. Me. I had spent years believing I didn't matter, showing up for birthdays no one remembered, sending cards no one replied to. Now I found out I was meant to inherit the very thing they'd always told me I didn't belong in. Jolene pulled out a second folder, Langston's notarized statement. Signed, dated. Witnessed. "I kept these because your father asked me to," she said. "He knew something might happen. He just didn't expect it from his own daughter." It was like something unzipped in my chest. Heat, shame, disbelief all tangled together. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked. "Because I was scared," she admitted. "And because I thought you'd never come back." I looked at the pages in front of me again. My name, my rights, the truth, buried under ink and lies. I spent the next morning scanning everything. Every page, every stamp. I compared the version Celine had read with the original. I circled mismatched language. Noted the clause that disappeared. All remaining ownership to be transferred solely to Nola Carr per my wishes. Gone. Replaced with vague language about family-held interests. The signatures didn't match. The date was off by 4 days. The notary line was blank. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't pace the room or punch walls. I sat very still, cataloging every detail. Then I opened my email. To Ether Sky Corporate Legal Affairs. Subject: Fraudulent will, violation of founding charter. Attached were the original will, Langston's statement, the scanned copies, and a timeline of changes, all clean, unfiltered, unedited. I didn't sign the email. I didn't need to. Let them do the math. Let them trace the lines. They buried the truth with my father, but I just dug it up. I just finished brushing my teeth when my phone buzzed again. It had become a habit lately, checking it every hour or so, not expecting much, but knowing that silence never stayed long. This time it was different. My friend Marcy, who never texted more than one emoji at a time, had sent 3 words and a link. "You need this." I opened it. It was a video. Not the original one that had gone viral. This was something else. New angle, new voice. A shaky clip, taken from somewhere toward the back of the plane. Celine was standing near the galley, speaking to another flight attendant. Her voice wasn't loud, but the mic on the phone picked it up clearly. "Let her sweat and coach," Celine said, smirking. "I'll make her wish she never boarded." The attendant didn't laugh. She looked away, uncomfortable. The clip ended. My chest tightened, not with hurt, but with purpose. The internet reacted faster than I could. Within an hour, the hashtag Sister Sabotage started trending on X. Comments flooded in. "Imagine doing this to your own blood." She smiled while plotting. "This isn't professionalism, it's bullying. Someone better check the ethics manual over at Ether Sky." It spiraled. Aviation blogs, social media influencers, even former flight attendants weighed in. Screenshots of my boarding pass were being reshared. Celine's image, the pristine, polished one she spent years crafting, was beginning to crack. By noon, even mainstream media outlets had picked up the story. A segment on daytime cable ran a piece titled, "When First Class Comes with Family Feuds." Ether Sky released a statement. "We are aware of the circulating video and are reviewing the incident in accordance with internal guidelines. We are committed to treating all passengers with dignity and respect." It was vague, typical, but it wasn't nothing. By early evening, a letter started circulating online. Typed, scanned, signed. Mr. Alden Hartwell's name sat at the bottom. "To whom it may concern," it read, "I was a passenger on Flight 472 from Austin to Seattle. What I witnessed was not a policy dispute. It was a public stripping of dignity delivered by someone in uniform to someone who should have never been questioned in the first place. That cabin became a courtroom, and she didn't even know she was on trial." Another letter followed, this one from a woman named Denise, a school counselor who had also been seated in economy that day. She wrote, "I watched a woman hold her composure while being reduced to nothing, simply for existing where someone decided she didn't belong. That's not how you treat people. Period. These weren't hashtags. These were declarations. I didn't post anything. I didn't comment or share or like. I watched. I listened. I waited. Celine didn't. She went live that night. Hair perfect. Makeup exact. Framed by the soft glow of her living room. Her voice carried the same tone it always did. Measured, rehearsed. I just want to say that I've always taken my job seriously," she began. "Sometimes people twist things online. That's the world we live in. But I stand by my record." The chat flooded fast. "What record? Humiliating your own sister. Still no apology. You smiled while doing it. We saw it." Her eyes darted across the screen. She faltered. "It wasn't personal. I was doing my job." Then someone asked, "If it wasn't personal, why'd you call her a discount sibling?" I don't know if she saw that one or not. She blinked, paused, and then she ended the stream. Just like that. A few seconds later, she deleted the video. But the internet doesn't forget. Screenshots, reposts, commentary videos. It all multiplied. By midnight, someone had created a digital timeline of events, complete with receipts, documents, and a side-by-side comparison of the will. I didn't post it. I didn't need to. People were putting the story together on their own. But I wasn't finished. The next morning, I met with my attorney, a quiet woman named Teresa who had handled estate cases for nearly 20 years. She didn't blink when I handed her the stack of documents. She read. She nodded. She took notes. When I finished explaining everything, Celine's manipulation, the reassignment, the will, Teresa looked up at me and said, "You're not looking for a lawsuit, are you?" "No," I said. "I'm looking for correction, not revenge." She nodded again. "Then we'll start with internal investigation, charter violations, and ownership review." By lunchtime, the paperwork was submitted. Clean, precise, thorough. It didn't come with press releases. It didn't come with a headline. But it carried weight. And it came with one final sentence. "I'm not here to cancel you. I'm here to unmask you." I didn't need validation from the board. I hadn't come to beg for a seat at their table. I had already reclaimed it. Quietly, methodically, like someone recovering a piece of herself that had been stolen in plain sight. What I wanted now wasn't applause or vindication. It was redirection. For them to stop looking through me as if I were a ghost of old rumors and finally see the person who had been standing there all along. 4 days after the scandal detonated across every news feed worth reading, I was back in Seattle. The sky had that particular Pacific Northwest shade of gray, thick as steel, endless as regret. A fine, needling chill brushed across my fingertips as I stepped out of the car and onto the slick pavement leading to Ether Sky's glass-fronted headquarters. My reflection in those mirrored panels was precise. Hair tied back, gray suit pressed to perfection, no makeup, no statement jewelry. Clean, quiet, deliberate. I wanted to look like composure itself. Security checked my name, their eyes flicking between the badge photo and my face. Recognition dawned. Half shock, half sympathy, but professionalism kept their hands steady as they waved me through. The receptionist gave me a tight, polite smile, the kind that tries to hide everything it already knows. She failed. Everyone knew by now. The elevator ride to the 26th floor was soundless except for the faint hum of air circulation. My reflection followed me in the mirrored wall, steady gaze, slow breath, pulse beating like a steady drum. When the doors opened to the executive boardroom corridor, the air felt denser, thicker, charged with the kind of tension that happens when truth is about to arrive uninvited. Inside, the room was already assembled. A dozen polished faces around the obsidian glass table, each trying not to look at me too directly. Celine Carr sat near the center, flanked by her legal team and a PR handler in a navy pantsuit who was so rigidly still she looked carved out of propriety itself. Celine, as ever, looked perfectly staged. Not shaken, never that, but rehearsed. Her posture said she still believed she could outlast the storm. The chairman, an older man with silver hair and glasses sliding halfway down his nose, tapped the folder before him and spoke without ceremony. This meeting is now in session regarding misconduct allegations involving Miss Celine Carr. No small talk. No greetings. Just a sentence that set the tone for everything that followed. I took the seat opposite Celine. Alone, yes, but not unarmed. My folders lay neatly before me, and every page inside them was a quiet blade. The air in the room was cold, not from the thermostat, but from restraint. The kind of chill that forms between people who have shared lies too long. No one smiled, not even the ones who had once pretended to be allies. When I spoke, my voice didn't waver. It didn't rise or beg for attention. I'm here today to provide documentation relevant to this review. I opened the folder and began distributing its contents. It includes seat reassignment logs from Flight 472, internal communication records among the crew, a notarized original copy of my father's will, and authenticated comparisons to the altered versions submitted after his death. I passed each folder down the table, paper whispering over polished wood. No one interrupted. Not a throat cleared. There is also, I continued, video footage from multiple passengers capturing Ms. Carr mocking a paying customer, me, while knowingly misusing her authority to alter my assigned seat. Someone at the far end clicked the projector. The screen brightened. Then came the voice. Her voice. Let her sweat and coach. I'll make her wish she never boarded. It echoed across the boardroom like something living. Too loud, too clear, too undeniable. No one spoke. Celine's jaw tightened, but she didn't flinch. The PR woman's gaze locked on the table, her knuckles white against the legal pad in front of her. When the footage ended, I turned toward the chairman. You can silence someone for decades, I said evenly, until she learns how to make silence her weapon. The silence that followed was heavy enough to bend steel. Finally, one of the board members, a woman in her 60s, gray streaks running through her hair like lightning scars, leaned forward. Her voice was low, incredulous. How the hell did this go unnoticed? Another, younger man muttered, This is a systemic failure. No one disagreed. The chairman's eyes moved across the table, taking in the faces, the evidence, the unspoken complicity. Then he nodded, slow and deliberate. We've reviewed the documentation and the footage. There's no ambiguity here. He turned toward the HR director. She spoke with the kind of precision only years of corporate containment could teach. Effective immediately, Miss Celine Carr is suspended pending full disciplinary action. Her credentials are revoked. An internal ethics review will determine further consequences. Celine didn't react, not at first. Then, in one elegant, furious motion, she stood. Her chair scraped against the floor with a sound that felt final. She gathered her things without looking at anyone and left the room as if the air itself had offended her. The PR woman trailed behind, her mask of professionalism cracking just slightly at the edges. No one looked after them. The door shut. A single, sharp click. The meeting ended soon after. People shuffled papers, avoided my gaze, murmured procedural reassurances. I waited until the room emptied before standing. I gathered my folders, adjusted the sleeve of my gray suit, and walked out with measured calm. In the elevator, my phone buzzed. A single notification. Unknown number. I tapped the screen. It was from my mother. I didn't know, Nola. I wish I had asked more. I'm sorry I let you fade. No emojis. No dramatics. Just a line of truth in the middle of a digital sea. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't reply. Not yet. There are wounds that don't close with a single apology, they just stop bleeding quietly. That night, I sat at my father's old desk, the one he built with his hands in the garage of our first house. The wood was scarred with years of use, coffee rings, pen scratches, faint dents from late nights spent drafting blueprints and dreams. The smell of varnish still lingered faintly. I opened my laptop and downloaded the board's official letter, acknowledgement of submitted evidence, confirmation of disciplinary action, and a formal commitment to ethical reform. I saved it, printed a copy, filed it neatly into a manila folder labeled with a single word, closure. Then I sat back, the city lights flickering through half-open blinds like restless stars. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, a sound of movement, consequence, continuity. I wasn't angry anymore, not even relieved, just aware. This isn't revenge, I whispered, to no one and to everyone. It's correction. The words hung in the dim air, steady as my breath. Correction, not destruction, not triumph. Just the quiet righting of a long imbalance. Outside, Seattle's night hummed on, indifferent but alive. And for the first time in years, so was I. A week passed. No more headlines. No more screenshots. No more calls from lawyers or reporters asking for just a few words. Silence again, but this time I welcomed it. It didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I arrived at Seattle-Tacoma Airport just after sunrise. No entourage. No camera phones following me. Just me and a single carry-on. I walked through the terminal, slow and unbothered, like someone who didn't need to prove anything anymore. At the gate, the agent greeted me with a soft smile. Welcome aboard, Ms. Carr. Seat 1A is ready for you. She didn't pause at my name, didn't double-check the list, or glance down at my shoes. She said it like it was obvious, like it belonged to me. I stepped into the plane, and for the first time, no one looked twice. No stares, no smirks, no whispers pretending to be questions. The crew greeted me politely, with that quiet tone reserved for people they respect without needing to know why. The seat was the same. 1A, plush, window side, warm lighting casting soft shadows over the leather. But everything about this boarding felt different. My hands weren't trembling. My heart didn't race. I didn't check my ticket twice. I simply sat. Across the aisle, a young woman was settling into her seat. Early 20s maybe, messy bun, denim jacket, frayed tote bag clutched to her chest like a life vest. Her knees bumped the tray table. Her eyes darted around, unsure where to put herself. I recognized that look. I'd worn it myself once, when I thought proximity to luxury required permission. A few minutes later, a flight attendant came by with the menu options. I glanced at the list and then leaned toward her. Hey, do me a favor. I nodded toward the girl across from me. Give her my entree. The salmon. She looks like she could use the extra comfort. The attendant gave a quick nod. Absolutely. No fuss. No questions. Just kindness moved forward. Halfway through the flight, with the world outside the window blurring into soft clouds, I reached into my bag and pulled out a sealed envelope. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable, my father's. I had found it in the back of a drawer a few days after returning from Seattle. Folded neatly, hidden behind an old cigar box. I hadn't opened it until now. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, yellowed slightly at the corners. Nola! If you're reading this, I'm gone. And I probably didn't say enough when I was here. That's on me. You were always the quiet one. People mistake quiet for weak. Don't let them. Don't let silence define you. Let it sharpen you. One day, they'll realize you were the anchor holding this family in place all along. His handwriting was shaky near the end. A line trailed off, unfinished. But he didn't need to write more. He had said enough. I folded the letter back carefully and tucked it inside my journal. I leaned back in my seat, letting the hum of the engine fill the space inside me that used to ache. A notification popped up on my phone. Ether Sky launches initiative. dignity first. Inspired by recent internal review and passenger advocacy, the company pledges to retrain staff and reinforce accountability from the top down. There was no mention of me. No quotes. No pictures. But I knew. People knew. I glanced at the girl across the aisle again. She had taken off her jacket and was reading the in-flight magazine. A hot meal tray rested on her table untouched. She caught my eye and smiled, shy but grateful. I smiled back and turned toward the window. As the plane began its descent into Austin, the clouds gave way to familiar roads and rooftops. My city, my home. I didn't think about whether Celine had packed up her office, or whether Mom was waiting with an apology she would never say. None of that mattered anymore. I wasn't waiting for closure. I was walking in it. As the wheels touched down, I closed my eyes and took a breath, so deep it reached the bottom of my spine. I never needed their seat at the table. I just needed to stop shrinking to fit at it. Sometimes, the greatest justice doesn't come from shouting the loudest, but from standing your ground in silence until the truth can't be ignored. Nola didn't seek revenge to destroy her family. She sought correction to reclaim herself. How many people have been pushed to the back? Not by strangers, but by the very people meant to love them. Have you ever been made to feel invisible by your own family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more.